Hey, I'm Dark North. In this video, I'll be talking about builds and artifacts for Ganyu. I'll be talking about builds for DPS support and Hybrid Ganyu, and you can check the timestamps in the description to skip to any part you find interesting. So let's start with DPS Ganyu. The first build is 4-piece Wanderer's Troop Melt build. For the 4-piece Wanderer set, the main stats would be attack percent or elemental mastery for the timepiece, whichever you have more or less of, as you want to keep both of them in balance for maximizing damage. The goblet would be cryo damage and circlet would be crit damage. Ganyu gets 20% free crit on consecutive charge shots, and cryo resonance gives you 15% crit rate on top of artifact substats, which is why you want to use a crit damage circlet instead of crit rate. But if your artifacts are trash and you have no crit at all, then it might be worth using crit rate for the time being until you get better artifacts. But you should plan to switch to crit damage circlet in the future when your crit rate goes up through substats. The 2-piece effect of the Wanderer's set gives you 80 EM, which is very good as you want to proc melt on this build, and EM increases melt damage. The 4-piece effect gives you 35% charge attack damage if the character is using a bow or a catalyst. This build would give you the highest charge shot damage out of any build for Ganyu. If you see videos with people doing massive numbers on Ganyu charge shot, this is the artifact set they're using. To maximize the damage of 4-piece Wanderer's Troop, you want to proc melt on Ganyu's charge shots as much as possible due to having a lot of EM with this build. You want to apply pyro to the enemy and then charge shot with Ganyu to do big damage. If you want to maximize your charge attack damage as much as possible, this is the build you should go for. Second is the 4-piece Blizzard Strayer Freeze build. For the 4-piece Blizzard Strayer set, the main stats for the artifacts would be attack percent or energy recharge if you don't have enough of it already, as you want to have high uptime on your ultimate to keep things frozen. Cryo damage on goblet and crit damage on circlet. The Blizzard Strayer set gives you 15% cryo damage bonus, and on the 4-piece effect gives free crit rate, 20% on enemies with cryo status and 20% more on enemies that are frozen. So in a freeze comp, that's free 40% crit rate on top of the 20% from Ganyu passive and 15% from cryo resonance, bringing the total to 75% excluding crit rate substats. So with this build, you want to stack crit damage as much as possible whenever you can, as you don't need to worry about crit rate. If you do get crit rate on substats, it's fine, but you would want crit damage substats ideally on all of your artifacts. The downside is you can only use cryo, hydro, and physical characters on the team, as you don't want to cause a reaction that removes cryo, as then you lose your crit. Next, we're going to talk about Hybrid Ganyu. For this build, we're using 2-piece Gladiator and 2-piece Blizzard Strayer. 2-piece Gladiator gives you 18% attack and Blizzard Strayer gives you 15% cryo damage bonus. You want to use attack percent on the timepiece and cryo damage goblet with crit rate or crit damage depending on what you are lacking. This increases all of her overall damage. This build doesn't maximize damage of either DPS or support Ganyu, but is a mix of both, thus it's called the hybrid build, and does high damage for both roles when you switch bows. The point of this build is to be able to switch from DPS to support and back just by switching bows and not having to level and switch between 2 artifact sets. This is good if you don't have resources to farm and level 2 artifact sets, or just don't have a good 4-piece Wanderer's Troop or a good 4-piece Blizzard Strayer. If you have been playing this game for a while, you probably already have 2 good pieces of Gladiator sets, so you just need to farm 2 good pieces of Blizzard Strayer, which is a lot easier than farming 4 pieces. This is more resource efficient, and you can use this until you get 2 good sets for Ganyu and is a good placeholder. The next build for this video is the support build Ganyu with 2-piece Noblesse and 2-piece Blizzard Strayer. The Noblesse 2-piece gives her 20% ult damage and Blizzard Strayer 2-piece gives her 15% cryo damage bonus. You want to go for energy recharge on the timepiece if you're not using Favonius Warbow and are using Stringless or some other bow, but if you are using Favonius, you can use attack percent. For the circlet, go for crit rate if it's below 50%, otherwise go for crit damage. This build focuses on Ganyu having her ultimate up all the time, taking advantage of the fact that she has essentially no cooldown on her ultimate and maximizing the damage of her ultimate. You can use her in pretty much any team and it will increase their DPS even if you don't melt at all. That's it with this video. If you found this helpful, consider leaving a like. Next video I'll be talking about the best weapons for Ganyu, so if you are interested, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned.